Hello and welcome to Out of State DMing broadcast. I'm your host, Lux Blackheart, and your co-host.
Iskion.
Join us as we discuss 3.5 D&D. Today will be centered around druids. Dun dun dun.
Spooky druids in
Spooky,
their
scary
spooky forest.
druids. Yeah, druids are easily out of the core classes, I would say easily my second favorite class. Easily. They have plenty of
They will set,
options.
they will send the evil diabolical rabbit creature from Monty Python after you.
uh,
Multiple Monty Python rabbits after you.
because they do have a bundle of different attributes and features that make them worth playing, as long as you stay with inside a certain lane that druids unfortunately cannot really leave. One of the lanes they have to stay in is they have to be some form of neutral. Lawful neutral, chaotic neutral, or neutral good, good if a DM permits it, neutral evil. But
Well, which is better than second edition, which made you be true neutral,
yeah,
which is practically impossible to do without breaking your alignment in one way or another.
yeah. Well,
Because we have to go after the bad guy. Well, maybe. We need to. You can't kill the bad guy. Why not?
we'll get into alignment shenanigans with a later episode. But druids do have to be some form of neutral. Uh, when it comes to wearing armor, unless you're using uh, wooden armor that's been magically altered by ironwood, you can't wear metal. So it's padded leather and hide armor. If a DM's being slightly nice, you can use studded armor, but the studs, instead of being metal, are bone. Don't ask me how that still keeps its level of protection. It does. Uh,
Because they're magical bones
yeah,
from skeletons.
yeah, yeah. Uh, a thing that a lot of people more or less as for some reason the screen has gone black. Uh, okay, yeah. Um, as you can see, the cool picture there. Despite what a lot of people assume about what uh druids can and cannot utilize when it comes to metal, uh, they can use a lot more metal than people think. Their metal restriction is armor related. It is not actually weapon related or tool related. This I will state for many years, uh, in when I was starting and stuff, a lot of the DMs and players hammered in the whole scimitar is the only metal based weapon a druid can use. If it's not a scimitar, you can't use it. And it's like, okay, well, I'll run with it. And it wasn't until around the time that I had to start DMing, which means you have to start doing a certain level of reading into particular classes and feats and stuff, whatnot. But when I started reading up on stuff about druids, this I wanted to make sure that I was doing them correctly for NPCs, or when I was helping another person create a character or advance a character, I knew something rather than nothing. I read the whole proficiencies section, and I was livid because
And why were you livid?
it's because it's a bold faced lie. This is like one of the reasons why like, I went Unless I'm just gonna run around naked turning into animals, I'm not gonna play a druid. But then I read it, and read it's like a druid has a lot of really cool stuff other than turning into animals. Animals. The fact that they get to use daggers, they get to use scimitars, they get to use sickles, short spears, and spears. Not not wooden ones treated with this, not wooden ones treated with that. That's a normal spears, short spears, and sickles and daggers are on the list with no restrictions to having it be some other random material. And the armor restriction, okay, being that they could wear any form of light or medium armor as long as it wasn't metal. That's where a lot of people get the confusion about they can't use metal, is that right there. A Well, my brain just stopped working. Like another stick is a druid who wears prohibited armor or carries a prohibited shield is unable to cast. Yeah, you can't cast your spells or use any of your supernatural spell-like abilities for 24 hours. Uh, After thereafter. So it actually does penalize you for breaking those prohibitions. But it's like the fact that like proof that not everyone reads. As I said,
Yeah,
I was
and you might
deterred
need your
from it.
bear form.
The what?
You might need your bear form during that 24 hours that you can't use
Yeah,
anything.
yeah, yeah. There's like a bit like when I was until I was forced to be DM. DM. There's some classes that I just ignored, didn't care about because here's the box with everything I was told, informed of about them. So I mainly just stuck to fighter because it was like it's over simple. I get to wear heavy armor, get a um, get a big tough weapon, carry a shield, get lots of feats that make me killing the bad guys a lot easier. It's extremely simple. It's extremely forward, forward. And even though I was told I shouldn't, I started diving into doing ranger stuff with future characters, and I was like, okay, I it's a more naturey fighter, yay. But then around the time, like I said, the time I was forced to DMing, I went, I gotta know exactly what my players are capable of doing. So I started to actually read a bunch of the stuff, and I went, I I was lied to, I was misled. What the actual hell? So I spent a long time trying to uncondition a lot of players uh, that were left behind by the group that conditioned them to do certain things while then trying to actually better understand and do stuff. So I did mess up a lot. But the mental restrictions, unless it's one of the other editions that specifically says something different, it's only for armor, which means you can run around with just with a sickle and a dagger going
Because that's what you do.
yeah. When it comes to spells, they are a lot like uh, clerics and paladins and rangers because they're technically divine spells. You know all spells of the level you can cast, so each time you do your preparation, you can sit there and nitpick what ones you want to cast for the day. They're locked in after that point, but you got them, and then the next day you can constantly switch. Unlike the arcanists who are kind of stuck with limited amount of spells they can know, you can sit there and go, huh, I want this spell today. Next day, I want these spells. So like you can constantly have a completely different list each and single day. Uh Wisdom is their casting stat. So just like all the other diviners, the higher your wisdom, the higher level spell you can eventually cast, and the better bonuses to your DCs. while also the more bonus spells you can actually eventually get.
And druid spells are some of the have some of the coolest
Oh
high
yeah,
level spells.
when we do the episode about spells, when we get to druid stuff, some of their spells are really good. Like all casters, there's some of the spells you're like, that sucks. But then there's other ones that are just really good. Uh, but as you can see, the druid does get a bundle of class features. Like they start play with so I try to slightly angle it. Okay. They do start playing with an animal companion, which it does have a standard list for the animal companion, imagine, and a list for when you get certain higher levels, certain other creatures become available for you to get. And unless a DM alters and or adds and removes stuff from that list, the generic list fits for everything that doesn't need alteration or maintenance on. Because there's some worlds that some of the creatures are either A, don't exist, or B, aren't in the area the party's starting with, so there's no logical way to have that animal be there. Uh,
Unless it's the Monty Python rabbit, and then you have to convince your DM that you
yeah,
need the Monty Python rabbit as an animal companion
exactly. Uh, the next ability is Nature
because
Sense.
purple teeth.
Yeah. uh, what Nature Sense does is you get a +2 to knowledge, nature, and survival checks, which may not seem very helpful. Any bonus is a good bonus, and this starts off with you additional +2 to two separate skills. Wild Empathy is probably the best ability anyone could technically ask for when it comes to dealing with animals. Uh, and that ability does what a lot of people think Handle Animal does. This Handle Animal does its own thing over there, and when we get to skills, we'll go over Handle Animal. But Wild Empathy uses your Charisma score and the number of levels you have in Druid as your bonus to your die roll to alter the creature's attitude. It generally takes a minute to do so, and you have to hope that the rest of the party isn't trying to kill the monster, otherwise, they automatically ruin it. So you roll to see if you actually make it go from like hostile to just unfriendly or indifferent or helpful. So if you roll high enough, you can literally turn like a very upset dire bear. Go from like I'm gonna eat you to oh now I'm gonna help you because you rolled high enough to go from hostile to helpful. It can be used on magical beasts, but there's a restriction and a penalty. The restriction is the magical beast has to have intelligence score of 1 or a 2. It cannot be smarter than that, which means there are certain creatures that you want it to work on, it's not going to work on because they're really smart or are just smart enough not to fall in the bracket. It's like, for instance, because this is funny, it does not work on a Tarask, even though it is a magical beast and can be labeled stupid. It has an intelligence of 3, which means right there, it doesn't count. Uh, and if you viewers at home decide to go digging in, you can go digging through the monsters manual, looking at any of the magical beasts to see what ones are dumb enough to have this ability to work on, and what ones are too smart. Uh, the penalty you get for using wild empathy on magical beast is a -4 because
It
it's
doesn't matter. It still might be necessary.
yeah, it's like while it's a -4 or not, you could end up having the terrible monster trying to rend the party to pieces. You roll just high enough to make you go, I'm indifferent now. I'm gonna go this way now. So it is really useful. Woodland Stride is another good excuse me, ability. What it does is while you're in nature, a lot of the hindering terrain that slows everyone else down, you don't worry about. Bushes, uh, like big or small bushes, random rocks, my brain, vines that people have to move through. It's just natural surroundings that count as hindering terrain no longer hinder you. If it's blocking, it's still blocking. Like you can't walk through a big boulder or a tree unless you have something that lets you do that. So it's like, oh hey, this is blocking because I can't walk through this tree. And it only works on natural surroundings, meaning if someone casts a spell that magically alters the surroundings, it's no longer uh under the effect of a natural stuff. Like entangled, it's not natural. It's magical. So you can't woodland stride your way through that. It's magical plant. The plants have been magically altered to try to slow you down and or hold you in place. So you can't just magic your way. Magic. You can't just walk your way through that. At level 3, you get possibly one of the best powers anyone could ask for, and it's called Trackless Step. While in nature, so it doesn't work in urban environments like cities or towns, but it works in anything that uh, can be classified as nature. You, unless you want to be followed, you can't be followed. You can't be tracked. So you leave no so you leave no footprints. You leave no scent. So unless you want someone to track you down, yet they can't, unless you want them to. The going through. Go back to that part section in a moment. Nature's Lure gives you a +4 on saving throws against spell-like abilities of Fae. So any Fae using spell-like abilities, you have a better chance of resisting because you're a nature person. Because yay, nature's awesome. And Fae are technically at their core nature entities. So like dryads, pixies, and sprites going, here's my magic. Ooh. You go, +4. Bet. The next thing they get options to is probably one of the most complicated things is wild shape. Going back up to here to show some of it. Wild shape is probably the pinnacle reason why so many people go for druid. And in my experience as a player and the DM, I've seen the amount of people who get upset that they cannot use it at level 1 is sur- surprisingly and hilariously really high. In like my 20 plus years of playing, the amount on average the amount of people who try to argue, whine, or even bribe the DM to let them have access to wild shape at level 1 is about like 8 out of every 10 people I've personally experienced trying to either, like I said, trying to either get it or whine about it at level 1. Because that's something that all druids eventually get to do, but it's not a weak thing. It's a very potent thing. It's a very powerful thing. It's a very important thing. It is not the center point of the druid. It is just one of the many awesome things of a druid. And its restrictions, besides being, if you look here, you can see that at level 5 you get it once a day, and periodically the number of times you get it does increase to a max of 6 at level 18. But the actual restrictions go off of A. It has to be an animal for the core part. So if it's anything that's not an animal, you ignore it. Focus on animals. Two, you have to have an interaction with it. Because if you don't, if you've never, it have had an interaction with the animal, you you can't turn into an animal. It's a difference between uh when it comes to like putting a car together. You can read a manual all day long, but it doesn't necessarily mean you actually know how to put the car together. You have a gist, but until you actually do the activity of putting the car together, you can't say you know how to do it. The other restriction is hit dice. The animal you wish to turn into, its hit dice has its hit dice has to equal or be less than your total level. That's another reason why getting level 5 makes a whole lot of sense because at that point, a lot of the animals you're going to have interacted with and or possibly want to turn into are going to most likely be somewhere between 2 to 5 hit dice. There are
Gotcha,
several
gotcha,
animals
gotcha.
that you think are like, oh, it's gonna have low hit dice. And you're like, wait, what do you mean horses are 3 hit die creatures?
Which is why it's badger, badger,
Yeah.
badger, 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 badger,
Uh
badger, badger, mushroom,
Yeah,
mushroom.
it's like a lot of people think deer are super easy to kill things. Like, no, they're 2 hit die animals. They don't have like 1 or 2 hit points. They have 2 hit dice worth of hit points. Then you roll over to like a rabbit where it's like you kick it, it dies.
But it's fast.
Yeah, but it's fast, so catching it becomes the problem. So with that hit dice thing there is so by the time you get the ability, you can have a list of things you've interacted with, and it's like because it's only animals, you don't need to put different categories stuff there. It says, okay, all of these are animals. You have to pay attention to size and hit dice. The reason the size is important is you can turn into animals. Scrolling back down to here so you guys can see it. Of course, it's being silly because it's all that stuff there. You can turn into trying to see where it's actually listed because I don't want to give the wrong information. Yeah, right there. You can turn into smaller, medium-sized creatures at once a day at 5th level, and turning back is for free. Going all the way back up
I would hope it would be
here.
free
Yeah,
and pretty
yeah,
difficult if you had to use any actions
yeah.
to turn back into
Oh,
yourself.
you wouldn't believe how many people assume that they're permanently stuck there until the time runs out. It's like no, 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 no. You can turn into it. What's it's a daily takes up one of your daily uses, and either you turn back when either of one of these conditions is met. One, you go unconscious. You don't stay in your animal form if you're unconscious. That includes falling asleep or being put to negative hit points or being knocked out. You're going back to your normal form because in an unconscious state, you revert back to your natural form. Two, willingly turning back. It's still a standard action to turn back, but you can turn back. Three, time runs out. Now, it's not a short time either. The amount of people that thinks like, oh, it's just short lived. You just turn into it for a little bit and done. It's like, what do you mean a little bit? What's a little bit for you? Because it's an hour per level for when it
Now the
comes.
question is it consecutive time or is it or can you be a can you turn to your wild shape for a battle that lasts 3 rounds and then turn back again later on the same day, no battle,
Uh,
5 rounds.
No,
You're now at
each use has its own separate timer. So if you're level 5, you can turn into a uh, animal for 5 hours. Once you reach level 6, you get 2 uses of your wild shape. So you can turn into it for one animal for up to 6 hours, and once you turn back, you can turn into a animal again for its own 6 hours. The time isn't split up between the number of uses. It's each use is its own time, which means at a certain level, you can spend your entire existence as that animal. Does Once you get to 12 level 12, each use lasts 12 hours. By that particular point, you can use it 4 times a day. So you can spend the first part of the day as an animal before you're forced to change back, and then you simply just go somewhere where no one can see you, go back to your normal form, and then reactivate it, and then run back as it, which theoretically means if a DM wants to be a little clever or a little bit of a sneaky little git, the stray cats you see in towns,
maybe a
the
druid.
crows surveying particular areas in the woods,
Maybe a druid.
that awkward, I mean, it has that awkwardly out of place deer that's all by itself, it could be a druid. And because they get to stay in that form for hours, they can literally sneak around an entire town as a alley cat, or if it was a tomcat, which is usually run around, enjoying the cat life with only having to worry about how those people interact with cats being their only concern, but it means they get to just roam around and be inconspicuous. Yeah, inconspicuous. It's like unless someone wants to give the attention to a cat, 9 out of 10 times, no one's gonna care about the cat. At that tenth time, it's either a player assuming that the DM's having them be stalked or followed by a druid, or it's an entity that's had way too many shenanigans involving druids happen to them. But most of the time, it's just players either attempting to metagame or just being assholes to the cat. And again, it doesn't have to be cat. If there's doves there, they could turn into a dove. You could turn into a rat and go hang out in the sewers. Because
Wow.
eventually, because if you're probably wondering, well, some of those animals you mentioned are smaller than medium. They're smaller than small.
And
Well,
aren't rats vermin?
yeah. No, rats are classified as animals.
Okay.
Yeah. At level 11, you can turn into a tiny animals. At level 8, you can turn into large animals. So at level 8, you can turn into a horse. For 8 hours a day, you can turn into the party's steed if you really want to. I'm not going to recommend it because people are going to make jokes and innuendos that are inappropriate, but it does mean that you can turn into something big, like I said, like a horse, and you can then pull the party's cart and or wagon. You can let your character's best in game friend hop on your back and you guys ride into the sunset with people thinking there's a crazy person on a horse, and then the horse just goes, well, because I have this feats here, I'm just going to cast produce flame and start spitting balls of fire at people, so it can get real hilarious real quick. At level 12, the repertoire of things you can turn into increases. So besides being anything from tiny to large sized, you can now turn into plants. Not just a normal like a fern, but plant creatures like a shambling mound. Or one of the least favorite creatures that a lot of my players hate, a canopy creeper, because once you get the to a certain point, both hit dice, both level wise and next wise, you can go, huh? I'm gonna go hang out as a big, huge sized monster, I mean a plant monster that's just going to wait for someone to eat. And if you listen to keywords, I said huge. You're probably thinking large is the biggest they can get. That would be incorrect. At
I hate
15th
candy
level,
creepers.
you can turn into a huge sized creature, which means as long as it's a plant or an animal, you can turn into it of up to large size. Huge size. Which means if you want to turn into an elephant, you can. That's a size reference. At level 16, you get
Hey,
wild
and
shape.
then you can have a memory that
Huh,
never
yeah.
forgets.
At level 16, you get a wild shape ability to once a day turn into small, medium, or large elementals. It that once a day does not stack with the other normal wild shape. This is just specifically for elementals. You can turn into them once a day at 16th level from small to large. When you reach 18, it's twice a day. When you reach level 20, you can turn into a huge elemental of up to 3 times a day. And besides the separate restrictions to how many times you can turn into it or the size, it works in the same way normal wild shape does, which means at level 16, if you've run into a fire elemental of small to large size, you can go, huh, for 16 hours, I'm going to be a small sized fire elemental and I'm going to sit in this fireplace. People are going to assume you're a normal fire in the fireplace, but you're now hiding as that.
And if you're in the bad guy's place, you can
Burn down his house.
surprise them.
It's like not to
That
mention
too.
the fact that if you run into earth elementals, you turn earth elemental and you can just explore anywhere that the earth elemental can go through the earth, because they can move through earth and stuff. You can turn an elder elemental and just fly around. Water elemental and go, I'm swimming in the ocean. Uh, so it just opens your opportunities to shenanigans you can attempt to pull off, because it's great, it's awesome, and there is feats you can take to augment your wild shaping abilities. There's one you can take multiple times. Each time you take it, you increase the number of daily uses by one. There's another one that while you're using wild shape, your strength and con go up, because one of the things that happens when you use wild shape is your physical attributes become uh uh yeah your physical attributes lower or raise to that of the creature you're turning into. So if you're trying to turn into a cat, your strength, dex, and con are now that of a cat. So it does not matter if you're like, I'm a level 20 druid with like my lowest physical stats 16. You turn into a cat, you get whatever the cat is. So the augmented wild shape lets you get that +4 to it. So you're stronger and tougher in that form. There's a two separate feat trees. One is Beast Totem feat tree, where if you do it right, you can be able to turn into certain magical creatures, like a chimera.
Dun dun dun.
Or for those
Oh,
trying to be pure of heart, a unicorn. For those trying to be edge lords, displacer beast.
ooh,
Yeah. There's another feat tree known as the Child of Winter. Uh, you can by level 6, if you take follow that tree, you can swap out your ability to turn into animals with the ability to turn into vermin. So if you ever wanted to be a giant spider, a slithering centipede, a vicious crab, Child of Winter is the way to go.
Well, I mean,
So
centipedes are poisonous and huge and agile.
it, yeah, they are quite effective, uh, but also at the same time, not as effective as you would think. Like the real life giant centipede that can get like that long, uh, its venom can send you to the hospital. Not depending on where it bites you, depends if it can kill you or not, but it can easily hospitalize you with that bite. Besides the fact that it can cause a very serious wound. It's one of those things that a giant centipede, if given a chance, will try to eat you because it can. Those things, they're vicious and mean. So the monstrous centipede you could turn into as a child of winter, but it might not be exactly what you expected because it's the same thing as turning into animals. There's a lot of animals people think are really like they're really awesome, they're really cool, they're really boom. But then once you turn into them, you realize that hey, some of the reasons why this animal here is really hard to beat is because of its feats, like the forest sloth. The amount of people who run from a forest sloth because they don't want me to roll a handful of d6 is high.
Me,
And the druid turns into one and goes, "Wait, why am I not doing the same damage output?" It's like, well, it's simple. You
you're
don't
not
get
a
its
forest
feats.
sloth.
Its feats are very specifically uh, aligned to have it do certain things. One of those certain things is to give it a backhand of, "Dear God, don't get in a sloppy fight with this guy because he's going to win all of them." Because when I say a handful of d6, I mean I'm picking up a handful of d6 and I'm rolling them at you because it does a lot of d6 worth of damage because of the feats it has.
Just leave the area if a ground sloth is
Yeah,
in the
they're
same
big,
area.
they're mean,
Leave,
they have
go
an
away,
intent.
find,
Yeah, they
find
have.
find a place to hide. Go up in a tree. Of course, you might fail your jump checks to another tree if it decides to follow.
Well, then the fact that despite its size and weight, it does have a climb speed. So if a tree can support its weight, it can climb. Don't ask me why they're giving a type of ground sloth a actual legit climb speed, because it's like the environment is supposed to be and doesn't actually justify why it would actually have a climb speed, other than the fact that they wanted it to. Then there's the fact that if a tree's not thick enough or strong enough to hold its weight, that also means it's not big enough or strong enough to survive it pimp slapping the tree. Because if it wants to, if it's like, oh, I really want to make you cease to exist, it can tear through that tree relatively easily. Because it's like, here's a big clawed hands, and I'm just taking chunks out of this tree. So, like I said, the big thing is don't be in its area, or hope to God you have a high enough level druid to be able to wild empathy it to not kill you. And even though they're not predatory creatures, they are somewhat territorial and extremely prone to assuming you're going to try to kill it. So therefore, it's on site hands.
And don't wake it up from its
Yeah, well, I mean, they
hibernation.
spend a portion of the year asleep. But moving on past that little tangent we just got into, uh, the venom immunity. The amount of people who somewhat misunderstand that is a lot because all that ability does is make you immune to all poisons. Okay? Yay. For some weird reason, people assume that they're immune to things that aren't poison because of how those things are delivered. Like, for instance, dire rats carry filth fever. So if they bite you, you have to roll first filth fever. It's not a poison, it is 100% a disease. And there's people who immediately are like, oh my god, no. I'm not being affected by it. It's like that disease, not a poison. It's a disease, not a poison. Uh, then there's also the fact that technically speaking, once a druid hits ninth level, don't get to a drinking fight with it. Well, not drinking fight, drinking competition. Because guess what counts as poison? Alcohol.
Alcohol
Guess what they're no
is
longer
is
affected by? Alcohol.
poison.
So they cannot get
That's a
drunk.
really expensive, really expensive lab
Water.
test.
Uh, it means as long as no one knows better, they can technically get into a drinking contest and win. Their next ability is probably one that a lot of people either don't fully comprehend or care to use, or they overuse it to the point of your character is going evil. 1,000 faces. The druid gains the ability to change their appearance at will as if using the alter self spell, but only in your normal form. So not your animal form, but in your normal uh, form. The amount of people I've witnessed used it to turn into other players to get the other players in trouble is a lot. The amount of times where they've decided that they're going to use it to turn into the bad guy so that way they can get better on the place is a lot, while also not realizing it to a certain degree. You, the limitations of the spell does have its limitations. So if there's certain specific things that the person would have and or be wearing, there's a chance that it can't be duplicated, or you fall prey to the typical approach a lot of people have is a outfit that doesn't actually match what the person would normally wear. There's some bad guys like, oh, here's a noble, so you think noble attire. Well, if you don't do your research, you won't research into it. You won't know that hey, he may be a noble, but he's also a cleric, so he wears certain attire that's religious. So he may be having a noble's outfit, but he probably has holy symbols uh, adorned on it somehow, some way, because there's certain ways you can do it. So if you're like, I'm just gonna do it, so I'm in a noble's outfit. Okay, yay. Well, now you're being accosted by the guards for being impersonating him because yeah, the person does wear noble attires, but he has holy symbols in it. You're not gonna know why the guards automatically know you're full of feces, but it's completely foiled. Then there's the fact that people trying to use it to turn into people they've never met. It's like I want to turn into the king of this town. I mean, the king of this kingdom. Yay! It's like you've never met him. You don't know what he looks like. All you know is that he's human. You can't turn into someone you don't know. You can't alter your appearance to someone if you don't know what they look like. It's lack of knowledge, and there's people out there that go, "Well, I still do it." It's like you look like a generic person now. You don't look like the king. You look like a generic person. So it gets aggravating and migraine inducing simply because people just try to do stupid stuff. It's like there's been several instances where I've witnessed people using it to take the form of another party member and then committing heinous crimes. Like that type of crimes where you look at that person and go, I don't think I want you at this table anymore. More type things. Like, yeah, your character's now shifted in alignment. You're now this. Uh, yet no. And enjoy some torment from the other people because, dear God, slap in the face. But moving on out of that tangent, uh, is the last ability, Timeless Body. This effect is very effective. It kicks in at level 15, and it pretty much means your character physically stops aging. So if your character was 20 when it reaches level, you look 20 until the day you die of old age. You still die of old age. It's just you look like you're 20 until you die of your character's maximum age. Which also means if your character, through either a DM being a big turd muffin, or B, the party just not doing the right things. There's certain things that do eat XP. B, like my character's 69. Now I'm level 15. I have timeless body. Well, you're stuck as a 69-year-old old until your character dies of old age. So if you're lucky, you're young when you get it. If you're unlucky, age effects have already started to kick in before you get it. This it can be awesome, but also time sensitive.
That
Uh,
would really suck being 69 years old and and practically immortal.
well, it's technically an ageless feature, so you stop aging from that point. So you can get to like, well, I'm maybe 60. Well, I look 69, but I'm really 89. I have 1 year left until I die of old age as a human. So unless you do something to reset your age or something like that, you're kind of like, I look and act like an old man, and I don't have that much time left until I die. No, but like I said, there's also going to go back to go over some of the stuff for the animal companion. Uh, there's as you can see here, there's a chart that goes off of that tells the player and the DM what gets adjusted on the animal companion based on the level of the druid. It starts at the basic as getting additional hit dice, increasing their natural armor, their strength and dex going up. You would be surprised about how many people have assumed that it's one or the other, and it gets hilarious because it's both, not one. Uh, Tricks. There's an entire list thing of tricks and what an animal can and cannot do for tricks. And as you go up in level, they get to burns tricks. But the main meat of it is the special abilities they get. Link means that as long as you're within 5 feet of your animal companion, whenever you cast a spell that's a buff spell, the animal companion also gets it, but it has to stay within that proximity. So you can't cast uh, a shield spell on yourself, self, and they go, okay, your designated works, and then send it out like 70 feet away to go fight something. It's like, no, it's a you have to maintain radius. I just had a burp. That's not Link. That's Share Spell. Share Spell is the one that lets you do it. Link is you have an empathetic bond with the animal. It's not technically true communication. It's mainly feelings. Like you can. sad, angry, upset, in
Hungry.
pain, hungry. It's feelings based. Then as you get up in level, the animal companion gets evasion, which can help it uh not take damage from reflex saving throws. Devotion,
Evasion's a lovely, lovely feat.
yeah. Uh, Devotion gives it a bonus on saving throws against enchantment spells and effects. Multi attack only applies if the creature actually has multiple attacks. Otherwise, it yeah, there's not all animals that you can have as animal companion get it. And improved evasion is also really great. So it gets those really strong things there. And as you can see here, if you reach a certain level, you can get additional things added to the list. This is level 4, 7, 10, 13, and 16. And before you ask, there is a minus to your total effective level when it comes to this chart. So, for instance, when you reach level 4, uh, you can attempt to get one of the animals there, but your total level when it comes to the chart is -3. So you're considered a first level druid when it comes to what these get. When it comes to seventh level list, you're you have a -6. 10th level list is -10. 13 is 12. 16 is 15. So it doesn't really
Are we up
matter
to
the
amongst
what.
thieves yet? Are we up to
We're
honor
about.
amongst thieves
I'm
yet?
finishing this up first.
Okay.
Yeah. What this means is if the DM permits it because he has them in the world, a 16th level character can get a T Rex as a animal companion. You're considered level 1 when it comes to the chart, but it means you can acquire a something as powerful and as massive as a T Rex.
With its short, stubby arms.
Uh, Now for the last part of the episode, we are going to go over one of the newer druids in media for Honor Amongst Thieves druid.
Who
Before
could have
we,
run the entire movie by herself.
yeah, before we get into the whole what level technically she would have to been to do all of her stuff and what route, pretty much what she would have had to do it. I will state that it's still a good movie. I still enjoyed it, even though I just looked at it with a
Yeah, some of the
the
stuff
the
didn't make sense.
the only exception is just if you actually pay attention to what some of the actors and stuff said like when it came like the Barden's stuff is it's like they were you were watching people play a game and they had no idea on how to use their character.
And
Uh
gelatinous cube
yeah.
can't really. Yeah, it was the only explanation was it was a baby gelatinous cube.
Yeah, because that was too small of a generic scoop, but that's another problem today. No, but in
Anyway,
order for her to have done those particular things in 3.5, not 5th edition, because we already checked 5th edition and the character broke rules in 5th edition, but we're not going over 5th edition. We're going to start with the fact of the amount of times she used Wild Shape in this entire short sequence was a
you get
lot.
six.
It was like
She gets
six.
six at what 20th level, and she did it like 8 times and did
No,
vermin.
she did like 7 times, which means the
It
only
was more
way
than
it
she
would,
should.
yeah, the only way it would she would be able to do that would have been a be at minimum 18th level druid with the feat that gives her an extra use of her wild shape. That would be the only reason to explain why she's able to go so far. Also, having the quicken shape shifting. So instead of it being a move action, it was a not 7% action, it was a move action. So she was able to constantly, seamlessly go back and forth and all those things. Not to mention the fact that in order to turn into the rodent she turned into, she would have had to at least be 11th level at minimum. And even like for the burn stuff. Then there's uh, the
The fact
fact
she
that
casts no spells.
yeah, well, she casts no spells at all, which is like I can see
She's
limited
a druid.
spells, but absolutely no spells. It's she over relied on wild shape for a lot of it. Even though like in order just to have that amount of times a day puts her at having access to spells that yeah, other than just not wanting to be the centerpiece, that's the only explanation I have to why that druid didn't use any of its druid ability, any of its magical abilities, because it just would have just gone, oh, I'm just going to, earthquake this entire freaking thing to stop this guy from doing this. So it's like, uh, there's also the fact that she turned into an owlbear. Even
No,
by 5th edition standards, that's not possible. It's not on the list of things you can turn into.
it was. We
And
looked it up one day at Taco Bell.
yeah, as we were eating, we talked about it, discussed it, and it was like, that cheating little biatch. So even though cinematically it was cool, it was awesome, it's one of those cases that a lot of people who've seen the movie are probably doing everything they can to mimic her and what she does. Which, when it comes to not just 5th edition, but any other edition of D&D or a lot of tabletop things, it leads down a road of misconceptions while also setting up arguments. This, like I said earlier, the amount of people I've run into who are upset that druids cannot at level 1 use wild shape. You're gonna have people going, what do you mean I can only use it at level 5 and only once per day? She used it 7 times. It's like all that says is she's a significantly high level character. That's all that means. High level character. What do you mean I can't turn into an owlbear? She did. Well, for starters,
It's a movie.
even with the beast totem thing that lets you turn into magical beasts, it has a set list of what you can turn into, and just when you take that feat, you
But it's
pick
not
one
on
of
the
those
menu.
creatures. Yeah, the owlbear's not there. It's not. A DM could probably alter the feat to add it, but it's not there. So even in ways I found to alter and enhance it, not there. Not to mention the fact it's a large size creature, so at minimum she's an 8 off of the size of because she was also a horse, she's 8th level. The amount of time she used it, she's at least 18th level. Then you have the fact that she turned into a fly and a worm. That's a vermin. And then this size means she has to have access to certain feats that are epic level. There's epic level feats that let you turn into bigger or smaller things. So hypothetically, in order to recreate her, you're looking at a character in their 20s level wise. Just to have the amount of feats to turn into a vermin, just to have the amount of feats to turn into something so small. Just to be able to have the number of access of times to use that ability. Get just off the wild shape stuff, it's not a low level character. And I stopped trying to justify it because it's like I know it's gonna have to be here. And even if you try to do 5th edition stuff, it's like I'm not gonna go do digging to try to justify why she gets to break these rules in all of that entirety. Does it gets it's a migraine, it's a headache, and as much as I as much as I enjoyed the movie, that particular thing was a
Just
It irritated me. It took a certain level of joy from the movie, and it's one of the things that it's like if I put it out of mind, I can enjoy the movie, I can watch a movie, I can love the movie. But the moment people start trying to
It's a
talk about
great
stuff, I'm
movie.
like, rule break, rule break, rule break. They It's not a starting adventure group at all. All,
It was at
all.
least fifth level.
Yeah, it's like it's at least fifth level just for most of the character. But then you have her sitting there. It's like having a god walks amongst mortal peasants, and then have it do absolutely nothing but break the rules when it comes to this particular thing over here. So it's just.
Anyway,
So if you plan on being a druid, loosely base it off of her if you want to base it off of her. Don't try to mimic all of her crap because that could
and
give
cast
you a
spells.
migraine. Yeah, and unless for some reason you do something that stops you from casting spells, cast spells. But on that note, uh, thank you for watching.
Like and subscribe.
Oh yeah, remember to like and subscribe, and join us next week as we will be discussing fighters. I forgot for a
Fedors.
moment. This, yeah, fighters. The probably the staple simple class. But thank you again, and remember to have a great night.
See you next week.